We are used to a society and a country based on the ideals of self-sufficient, rugged individualism. But now that is called toxic masculinity, and it's not. You have to be honest with yourself. Otherwise, you're just living a lie. To be honest with yourself, you need to know yourself. And so brutally honest self-evaluation is the foundation for becoming a better person. It sounds easy on paper. It's very, very tough in practice. You can never improve yourself if you can't admit or identify where you need improvement. Gentlemen, I challenge you, every single one of you, to strive to be the uncommon man.
You're a man living in the modern world in a time when men and manhood are not what they once were. You live life on your own terms. You're self-sufficient. You think for yourself and you march to the beat of your own drum. When life knocks you down, you get back up because in your gut, you know that's what men do. You're a badass and a warrior. And on the days when you forget, we are here to remind you who you really are.
Men of Sovereign Circle, it is my distinct privilege and honor to introduce today's guest speaker. Mr. Ernest Emerson is a successful entrepreneur. He is a modern day philosopher on a variety of issues. He is probably the world's leading knife designer and knife maker. He's the inventor of the tactical folding knife for the United States Navy SEALs. His knives have been featured in major motion pictures, television shows, and they've graced the covers of multi-million selling books, including those by David Morrell. One is called The Protector. It features his iconic CQC7 folding knife, which is the knife that made him famous. And David Morrell is the author of the legendary book First Blood that became the famous movie starring Sylvester Stallone, among others. I've had him as a guest on my podcast 4 times. None of the appearances have gone any less than an hour and a half because he's such a fascinating individual. He is a great man, a great American, a true patriot, and a lover of freedom. Please welcome and give a warm E-Circle welcome to the one and only Ernest Emerson.
Well, Nikki, you've done it. You've done it to me again, and I got to tell you that it's tough to live up to your introductions that you give me, and I hope that I'm able to. It's funny when you hear somebody talk about you, because you have an opinion of yourself, and I think sometimes that differs. In fact, I think a lot of times it differs from the opinion that other people have of you. But when I have people say such warm and gracious things about me, it really makes me feel good. And so now my 9.9 has jumped up to a 10.5, so I'm off the chart. So, but thank you very much, Nick, and I'm glad to be here. I hope all of you guys get something from maybe something that we discussed together, and I'm here to just talk about a few things, I guess, but I want to also let it kind of just wander down its own path. If anybody has any questions, please. There's no offense taken in you interrupting me even mid-sentence. I don't care. If there's something that you would like to talk about, then it's an important thing to talk about. So I'll go whichever direction you guys want to go with anything, and we'll start with that. Nikki, you had mentioned about a presentation I did it's actually 2 or 3 years ago now, called The Quest for the Uncommon Man. And that became something that I really kind of identified with, and it was basically pointed out to me by an acquaintance, a gentleman named David Goggins. And he made the statement one time in a podcast that I happened to be listening to that he wanted to be an uncommon man in the midst of uncommon men. And that had to do with his time as both, I think, a forward combat controller from the United States Air Force, which is that's a special operations position. And then he decided he wanted to become a Navy SEAL. And so he spent a lot of time in the midst of uncommon men and still identified that even though he wore the same uniform and the same insignias and badges, that he still had room to go to make himself a better person. And, you know, most people will look at someone who is in special forces or there's a difference between special forces and spec war. Spec war being the Navy SEALs, special forces being the Army and other operations that occur within the Marine Corps and the Air Force, and probably. But spec war had to be, or Navy had to be different, so they call themselves spec war, which is specialized warfare. So, in the midst of him wearing all of those titles, he still said, "You know what? I've got room to improve," and that's saying a lot, because most people look at those types of individuals and say, "Oh my gosh, I wish I could be like that. That would be excellent if I could." I wanted to be a special operations guy, or whatever it is that you would think. We look up to those people, at least I do in my world, as being kind of the tip of the spear, which is what they actually call themselves and are referred to. And yet, at the same time, after hearing that from Mr. Goggins, it was like, holy smokes, man, that's a humbling statement from a guy who has done things that 99.9999 people would never be able to accomplish, which is basically just making it through the training. And it's funny because I was just looking at some photos, because I'm giving a talk down in Atlanta in about 3 weeks. And I was looking at some photos when I attended the retirement of one of my friends who I've known for many, many years. It was down at what they call the center, which is it's where BUDS training takes place for all Navy SEALs candidates. And I was looking through the photos, and we were out on what they call the grinder, which is where they had the ceremony. And I happened to see one of the photos, and along this whole front of the main offices that where all the officers and commanders and everybody are located on the training base, there was I just happened to look at the photo and I picked it up, and there's a whole row of helmets, because every Navy SEAL candidate that goes through BUDS training can quit at any time he wants. There's really you want to quit? We'll see you later. Thank you for your time. And when you do that, you go up and you ring a bell. So you ring out, and then you go and place your helmet that you have with you basically 24/7. You place that helmet on the floor in a line in front of all the offices. And that means you're no longer in a BUDS candidate, and you're no longer in training. But I looked at that and I saw all those helmets. There was probably 25 or 30. And I think we were only about halfway through an evolution at that time. And I guarantee you one thing: every single one of those individuals that wore that helmet for however long it is, because some guys they'll ring out after 2 or 3 days. Every single one of those guys, if you had asked him when he showed up that first day for training, he would have said, "No effing way am I going to ever put my helmet down on that ground and ring that bell." And yet, out of 80 or so candidates in each class, there's always about 50 or 60 that give up. Now, that could be for a bunch of reasons. Sometimes it's physical injury. Sometimes you just decide that that's not what you want to do. And then there's people that just didn't think it was going to be quite as hard as it was. And so they ring out when they reach that point where they don't want to do anymore. So anyway, I'm starting to ramble on about that. It's not really where I wanted to go, but what I'm saying is I want to prep what I'm going to speak about in a few minutes, is that you can have all of the aspirations and the want and everything else that goes into moving yourself from one place to another, or uh, taking on a new job or whatever. But want doesn't equal will. And one of the things I'm going to be talking about in a few minutes is the ability to maintain that will. And because once you go past a certain point physically, um, it really is the only thing that's propping you up and putting any gas at all in your engine is your resolve and willpower. And so, anyway, having said all that, uh, I guess we could move on to the quest for the uncommon man. So I'm going to be referring back to some notes because it's been, like I said, Nikki, 3 years since I've talked about this. So there's going to be some things because I usually have a PowerPoint up on the wall behind me and things like that I can refer to keep my memory going in forward direction. And I like to fill my life, actually, and it's reflected in some of the lectures that I do, with quotes by people who inspire me, and inspirational quotes that fill things in that maybe I've had rolling around in my head for a while, but wasn't able really to put it into words. But once I can find that feeling or whatever, I write things down. I write a lot of things down. I write down ideas. I write down motivational statements, and that's part of why I'm so enthralled with hearing quotes from people that I've maybe read about historically, or they just happen to. It doesn't have to be a famous person or anything. Could be someone I was talking to in the grocery store, and it's amazing because we don't always have to look up to learn. We just have to look, and then part of looking is also opening up all your doors so that you don't miss a beat. Because again, one of the things that I found that's been so important is I also look at every single minute of every single day and ask myself, what am I learning now? What am I doing that I didn't do before? Or how can I improve this? And, you learn things from people and places that sometimes you didn't think you were going to learn something when you had that conversation at the grocery store with the 85-year-old lady, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, that was really wise. That's experience talking. And so you don't always just look to those that we consider to be for me, I filled my life with a lot of heroes because I find people that I look at and go, damn, I want to be like that. How did that person get there? Or whatever. Well, that's good because that gives you sometimes a platform for getting yourself moving along. And I've always been one where I look at success, whether it's business or personal relationships, or any, being a father, how to raise children. I've looked at people that I felt were successful, and I've used them as a model. And so, and I did it with athletics my entire life. When I was young, and just to give you kind of a short overview, I played semi-pro baseball. I went to college on a football scholarship. God, that sounds so braggadocious when I tell this stuff, but I'm a member of 2 Hall of Fames for martial arts. Gosh, there's just been a lot of good stuff. So part of my athletic ability was also based on what I just call modeling. So when I was a young kid and I wanted to play baseball or I wanted to be a pitcher, I practiced, but I tried to emulate Sandy Koufax. Although I'm not a lefty at the time that I was really, really starting to ramp up on my baseball stuff, I said, here's one of the greatest pitchers in the entire history of baseball. He had a 1.29 ERA at one time, which is unheard of. And so I said, well, I'm going to copy everything that he does. I'm going to copy his stride, his stretch. I'm going to copy where he brings his hands up with the ball, how he delivers. And so I became I found that one thing that helped me a lot in my athletic endeavors was I tried to become a tape recorder or a human chameleon, if you will, and tried to look and feel exactly like the person that I was trying that was inspiring me to that I chose as my inspiration or model to be. And so you can take that same principle and apply that to anything in your life. Uh, and so for me, my entire life has really been based on improving everything that I do. And it's not just a matter of being the best, it's doing your best to always keep improving yourself because no one's ever reached, as far as I know, there's only been one perfect man who ever strode the face of this earth. And talk about a hero right there for sure. And we know who I'm talking about. Uh, I can't be perfect, but I can use him as a model to make me much better than who I am. And know that no matter how good I think I am or how I've got something down, I'm nowhere near the end of my journey and my ability to improve myself. So, once again, Nikki mentioned they take an hour and a half every time we have a conversation. I have a tendency to wander off and I guess wax philosophically about a lot of this stuff, but it kind of gives you a little bit of a premise for how I structure my life and the things that I do. So if it's any help to any of you, then I've had a 10-point or an 11-point day. Because again, when you get to a point where you can kind of pull your head out of the everyday clutter that we all jump into of our own accord most of the time, it's important to be able to leave. Honest, it sounds so cliche, but it's very, very important to leave the world or people that are in your sphere of influence better off than before they had a chance to meet you or anything like that. And I'll tell you, there's a great satisfaction in that. As an instructor over the years, I'll tell you, there has been no better feeling ever in my life, with the exception of maybe my wedding day and the birth of my children. But there's in my professional career, there's never been anything better than when somebody comes up and says, Ernie, you saved my life, or you saved my buddy's life. And that's really tough to top in my book. And very few people are fortunate enough to have that opportunity, but we're all fortunate enough to help people better themselves and lend a helping hand or lend some advice or actually get in there and grab that damn rock and give them a hand moving it over to the rock pile. So anyway, those are some of the things. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but those are some of the things that take an ordinary man and turn him into an uncommon man. And I enjoin all of you to strive for that goal, is to be an uncommon man, because there are so many people that they're okay being average. And I'm not saying I'm not average. There's nothing special about me in any way, shape, or form. I wasn't it's in terms of athletics, I was not the biggest guy. I was not the strongest guy. I was not the fastest guy. But I'm willing to bet I practiced 10 times harder than all of those other guys. And that's why I got to do the things that I did. And I listened to other people and I took their advice. And that's part of the reason I've gotten to the point where I am today. The greater danger for most of us lies not in setting our aim too high and falling short, but in setting our aim too low and achieving the mark. Now, that's part of what I was just talking about, is you can always be better at anything. And one other thing I want to throw in here too is, there was a great disservice done by a movie that came out a few years ago with Billy Crystal and some, I think Jack Palance was in it and other people. And it was a bunch of guys who were from the city and they decided to go out to a dude ranch to kind of get their manhood straightened out and all that good stuff and do some, outdoor work and all that. And I remember Jack Palance, they were sitting around a campfire. And I think Billy Crystal or one of the guys said, "Well, what's your advice on, what can you do to be the best that you can, or achieve happiness or satisfaction or whatever?" And Jack Palance stood up and said, "You pick one thing and you do that thing the best." Well, that was a big deal because it went through it became one of those quotes like "I'll be back" by Schwarzenegger. But the thing is, I 100% disagree with that. 100% disagree with that. If you look back at guys like Winston Churchill, holy smokes, the guy was a soldier, he was a warrior, he was a statesman, he was a historian, he was a mathematician, and he was good at every single one of those things. Because I think that most people, and I'm going to talk about what David also told me a while back, David Goggins was, which I'll get to in a minute, but you can't limit yourself. And you can't say, "Hey, I picked one thing and that's what I'm really good at." No, you know what? If you do that, you're gonna find yourself short at the end of your life, because we're capable of a lot more than we ever think we are. And I always use the analogy like, okay, so you're busy. I got it. What do you do at night when you get home? Well, most people sit on the couch and turn on the TV. Well, what good does that do you? I understand there's time to relax and things like that, but at the same time, you know what? You're just wasting those precious moments. God gave us a finite amount of time on this earth, and you don't want to squander a second of it. And as I get a little bit closer to hopefully knocking on St. Peter's door, those things become very, very important. And as much as I've tried to not be that guy who sits around and twiddles his thumbs, so to speak, I look back and go, "Damn, I wish I would have learned how to do that. Dang, I should have read those books. Dang, I should have learned how to play that instrument." And like what I was saying, when Nikki, when you brag me up like that, every time you do that, and I appreciate it, don't get me wrong, but in my head I'm going, "Oh, Nikki, there's so many things I should have done and wanted to do, and so many things that I'm still going to try and do and get better at and everything." So I see myself as not that guy that you might be describing. So, but see, that's an attitude, and that's one of those things that we'll get into when I speak about habits in a minute too. So anyway, moving forward, I want to talk about the four natures of man for a moment. Now, this comes from Thucydides, and it was approximately 450 BC. And what he said became in my life, some of the most important things that I've heard. And they are, in my opinion, immutable truths. They have never changed, and they never will. And those things are what he determined to be he was a historian who wrote about the Peloponnesian War. He was the historian of that war, which took many years to. I don't know if it was like a 30 or 40 year long war, but he was the historian. And he said the four natures of man are: number one, power always seeks to dominate the weak. Number two, power will always seek to increase its strength. Number three, power will never give up its position willfully. And number four, power will only yield ever to a superior power. So how does that apply to the goals of becoming an uncommon man? Well, what you'll find out, excuse me, that sounds too high-handed. I shouldn't say it like that. what I've found out is that that applies to the battlefield, of course, because that's what he was mainly describing. Number two, it applies to business. Number three, it also applies to relationships. And number four, it applies to every single person that you meet. Because what goes on is every time you run into someone that you meet for the first time, until you become familiar with them and all the guards are down and all that, those four principles are in play. And so it takes a very, very humble person to not be dominated by the four natures of man, because they're not necessarily good and they're not necessarily bad, but they're in play all the time. So if you're aware of them, you can see, okay, I know what this guy's doing or this gal or whatever. I see what's going on here. And it might not be a nefarious thing, and it might not even be a conscious effort by that person, but they have unwittingly fallen prey to those immutable principles. And one of the things that I want to stress about being an uncommon man is when you become aware of certain principles, you can start to use them and guide them to your advantage. And a lot of people are they've fallen into, well, I'm on the river, I'm in a boat, I'm just letting it go wherever it goes. Fate has decided, where I'll end up with my life, and I'm not even steering it. I don't have an oar, I don't have a rudder. I'm just going wherever the river takes me. Just so many people fall into that trap because that's an easy way to live, or maybe not so easy, because sometimes that river there'll be rapids. Sometimes the river will get too shallow. And so if you're aware that, hey, if I figure out how to steer my boat, I can guide that boat where I want to go. And so we're going to talk about, setting up some of these plans and things like that in a minute also. But, that's those four natures of man. They don't, look at our government, look at your government, look at everybody's government. That's an absolute whiteboard where every one of those principles is in play 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, because those people that are politicians, they are, I think anyone who wants to be a politician is addicted to power. I don't think it's to become rich, although they certainly use that power to enrich their own personal coffers. I've never known of a politician who came in a poor man and went out a poor man. That's for damn sure. But the ability to, I guess, just see those things in play where if you want to say, hey, does he really, Ernest Emerson, know what the hell he's really talking about? Is that really happening? Just look at anyone who's involved in government. And I say that all the way down to school boards and city councils and mayors and everybody else. So it's one of those things that it's immutable. But as a person who strives to be an uncommon man, you need to be able to recognize it in yourself. And if you can, then if you can put that to good use for good purposes, then good, go for it. If you are a person who might not be aware that you're using that to fulfill your own needs at the expense of others and things like that, then by God, you got to take the reins of that horse and steer him back on the damn track, because you have now become that person in the boat that's just floating along that river. So anyway, the 5 virtues of the uncommon man. And if you live by these virtues and try to incorporate them into your life, you're going to check off most of the boxes on the way to actually being the uncommon man. And what is an uncommon man? Well, when I was talking about the people that jump into that boat and just let it go where it wants, those are people that are not They don't want to take control of their life. They do not want to face some of the issues that I'm going to bring up in a couple minutes. And you don't want to be that guy, because you want to be the not just the captain of your own boat, but you want to be able to control where that boat's going, and whether that's happiness, whether that's, and again, all of these things can occur together simultaneously. To be a good businessman doesn't mean you have to be mean spirited or mean hearted or ruthless or anything. Uh, Being a good businessman doesn't mean you can't be a great husband or a father. And I'm just using business as a nexus point for, again, don't fall into that, pick one thing and do that well. No, you can be a good businessman. You can be a good father. You can be a good teacher. You can be a good parent. You can be all of those things uh, um, simultaneously. One does not exclude the other. And that's why I'm saying, none of us really know what our limits are. But the 5 virtues of the uncommon man. Number 1, honesty. Tough one to deal with sometimes, but one of the most important. Number 2, personal responsibility. Boy, do people ever duck that one. It's like someone was pointing a shotgun at them. They're scurrying, excuse me, all over the place to get out of the way of those bullets. Self-discipline. A little bit of sacrifice in that. A lot of people don't like that. Moral integrity. I believe since I last gave this talk, I've changed my idea about moral integrity a little bit. And the reason is because I believe that when you look at probably almost, well, no, that's not correct. I don't want to say majority. A large portion of the population in any country now, they have no moral code. They don't have a moral compass. And I think that has been supplanted by this foolish idea that science can answer everything, that we worship at the feet of scientific experiments and biology and all of that good stuff. And they never do take into account that a lot of the things in science, that they are correct. There's no way around the laws of physics. But at the same time, what they've done is they've excluded the fact that we have a soul, that we have to live in a moral way, and that there's a consequence for not doing that. And, most people, although religion is now becoming a much bigger sought after commodity, thank goodness for that, because I think that regardless of what your faith is and why you have the faith in God and Jesus Christ and all of that stuff, I truly believe that if you don't have that, then you'll never be an uncommon man. And having that on top of an understanding of scientific principles and all of that good stuff, one does not exclude the other. But what we've done is we have now said, well, I believe in science and whatever, so I don't need religion anymore. Because religion answers a lot of those unanswerable questions. And that's, I believe, is also the foundation for faith. Sometimes you got to believe just because it's the right thing to do. And you can't prove it, you can't unprove it, but you got to believe it. And so I think when I'm talking about moral integrity, we've replaced what I believe the code that's been really given to us. If you remove the emotional thinking about, is there a God? Is there not a God? Let's take away the entire emotional content of that. You're a blank tape and you're looking at it and going, okay, prove it, disprove it, etc. You really can't. And that faith no matter what, even if you did not believe in Christian values or whatever religion it is, because having said this, and I'm starting to go down another path here, so I apologize for that. But having said all of this, no matter what religion it is, most religions provide you with a good moral code. And science, and follow the science that we keep hearing from all the what I would consider to be the left wing liberalism, that doesn't give you that code. I don't believe a person is born with a good moral code. It's something that's given to you by several vehicles, your parents. I mean, it's not to say that a good person can't come out of a bad family, but if your family isn't there from the very beginning, imbuing you with as a little child, that yeah, you don't steal, you don't cheat, you don't lie, you always do the right thing. It's tough for a person, and I don't believe it's even possible sometimes for a person to come up with all of that on their own. So it's a result of your upbringing, your parents, the people that you associate with, and religion, because religion will provide that vehicle. There's very few religions on earth outside of some of the really wacky ones like the Church of Satan or whatever you want to call it, and they claim to be good too, by the way, but I don't buy it. But most good religions, they're here to give us a good moral framework to live by so that we can all get together and live next to each other, and we're all after the same goal, which is getting to heaven. And there's only way to get to heaven is to live by that code. And so anyway, enough on that. Number 5, impeccability. And we'll talk about impeccability in just a second. Boy, this is a much different talk than what I gave last time, Nick, because I'm starting to think about all these things as we go along. So the first one, honesty. Always be honest with yourself and true to others. Now, here's something that's very, very important. You can never be honest with others if you can't be honest with yourself. Okay? You have to be honest with yourself. Otherwise, you're living a lie. Because to be honest with yourself, you need to know yourself. And so brutally honest self-evaluation is the foundation for becoming a better person. So think about that. Brutally self-evaluation. It sounds easy on paper. It's very, very tough in practice. You can never improve yourself if you can't admit or identify where you need improvement. Now, I'll use just a little story that really was like, holy crap, I can't believe this actually happened to me. But we had, because in the business, because I own a company, we would have evaluations of the employees. And so we would hand out our evaluation paper and we'd have them check off like 10 boxes that had some questions in it. Like, do you get along well with others? Do you feel that your contributions are making a difference to the company? A bunch of stuff like that. And then it was kind of like your 1 to 10 rating. I think it was 1 to 10 actually that we used on the evaluations. We stopped using them because I found other ways to motivate the employees that worked a little better than that. But we had one person, and I'm not going to use her real name. Let's call her Sally. And she wasn't the best person, let's just say that. But I remember sitting there with one of my operations manager, because we do the evaluation. And when she came in for her evaluation, she had checked off a 10 in every single box. Now, mind you, this is a person and she didn't know this, but this is a person that we had been discussing for. I have one bad mistake that I make. I always give people too many chances, and so we'd been getting ready to get rid of Sally for probably a year because she was awful, and she had the opinion of herself that she was a perfect 10 in every single category. And I'm looking at my buddy and I'm going, dude, we just got done talking about we're going to fire her because no one likes her. Not anyone in the business likes her. She's disruptive. She caused basically fights between not only herself, but she would spread gossip about other employees and things like that. And I'm going, holy smokes, man, she thinks she's near divine, and she's the worst employee we have in the whole business. And so what I'm gonna say here is, you can have. I think she was being. The one thing she was is I think she was being honest in her own self-evaluation. But you can see how far off it can be if you really don't. When you look in the mirror, a lot of times you're not seeing the person who's actually looking back at you. You're seeing your construction of how you see that person. And that's why I brought up at the beginning, Nikki, when you were talking about me, you're saying, Ernie, you've done this and you've done that. And I'm sitting here going, God, I mean, I don't see myself that way because I know what I've done to get where I'm going. And I know what I've done that has held me back. Both personally and in relationships and in my, I guess my actions as would be viewed by Jesus Christ or God, because like he said, let he who is among you without sin cast the first stone. So I don't think I could ever be the one who could cast that first stone. That's for dang sure. But I want to be that person. So again, how do you go about being that person who can be brutally honest about their self-evaluation? Well, I look at it to start with, or to put it into terms most of us can identify with. I look at it as strategic planning, because one thing the military does well is they prepare for battle. So in terms of strategic planning, according to a military context, you identify the threat, you analyze the threat. Who is it? What is it? What are its strengths? What are its weaknesses? You plan your response. And that is, again, where is their weak spot? How do we go up against them? Where are they stronger than us? What approach should we use? Might not be military force, might be diplomacy, but you have to plan, and then you plan for all the different contingencies that could happen. We all know Murphy's Law is in effect, 24/7 in our lives, and the last thing you do is you execute your plan. So again, looking back at that boat analogy flowing down the river, you can't get anywhere if you don't know where you're going. So you have to have a plan. You have to have a plan in your life. And you have to face your worst enemy. Now, who is your worst enemy? And what do you do when the greatest opponent that you will ever face is ourselves? Because that opponent knows all of our weaknesses, and that gives him or her a strategic advantage over us. They know where we are weak. They know my strengths. They know the things that challenge me. They know the things that looking for the term, the carrot that they can wave before my nose, and that will start me to stray from my path that I want, or to modify my plan that I've decided to put together. So unless you're able to look at yourself and honestly say, hey, you know what? I know who I think I am, but I know who I really am too. That's a tough delineation to separate out because who wants to look at themselves in the mirror and pardon my French to all of you, but who wants to look in the mirror and literally say, you know what, you're a piece of shit. You better get yourself on the good foot and get yourself pulled up by the bootstraps and get going on with your life and live the right way. That's a tough thing to do because you got to admit that you have faults. And most of us will go through life. We don't want to face that. We don't want to think of ourselves as being an imperfect person, but we all know we're not perfect. But you've got to be able to say, you know what, I'll swallow that pill because that's going to make me better. And so you got to make those kind of decisions in your life. So one of the things that I want to finish up that little section is never blame anyone else or the system for your shortcomings or failures. If you do, then you will never, ever be able to change the things in your life that will affect you in a positive way. Now, think about this. When I was about 25, I worked in a big company. There was over 50 some thousand employees actually. And so I was around a lot of different people. And I noticed one thing, especially there was one individual that really he wasn't the best person, let's just say that. But thank goodness I became friends with him. And thank goodness he was there for me to be a friend of because he really wasn't that bad in terms of interpersonal stuff. But by God, his car would get repossessed because he unhooked the speedometer and then he wanted to turn it back in to the car company and get some kind of higher return on the value of his car and everything. And then they find out that the odometer has been disconnected and, his refrigerator got repossessed because he said, well, they don't know that the door handle was loose. And I said, I'm not making payments at that anymore, and et cetera, et cetera. And the credit company would say, like, you can't have that because you haven't paid on it for 6 months. Just all kinds of crazy things that were happening to him. And I looked at it because he was close to me. And I looked at that and I said, not everybody has these same problems. Every single bad thing that's happened to this guy, he caused it. And I was at a point in my life when I was that guy in the boat. So I wasn't really looking back on this. I was looking at it. And I said, man, if he can create all this chaos and disharmony and all these bad things to happen in his life, I can create good things to happen in my life and not do the things that cause bad things to happen in my life. But that required one thing. That required personal responsibility. Because if I literally, honest to gosh, 110% make myself believe from every fiber in my body that I am responsible for every single thing that happens to me, then I'm able to only do the things that make good things happen to me. And I mean, that's another tough one because we always want to blame somebody else. We always want to say, oh, it's because of this or it's because of that or whatever. It isn't. And I've had these debates with people also where they've said, oh, come on, you can't, what if you were to catch a disease? What if you were to walk out and a meteor fell on your head? You're not responsible for that. Yeah, I am. I am responsible for that. Whatever led me to that moment in time for those circumstances to happen, I'm responsible for it. Now, part of that mindset is also a result of if you are in a position where the things that you do are going to determine whether you live or die or your teammates live or die, or you have the success of a mission, you have to understand I have to take responsibility for every single thing that can possibly take place here, albeit a meteor could come down and hit me on the head, and I'm not in control of that. But if I'm aware of controlling and being responsible for every single thing that I can be, then I've tipped that balance from being at best even being at least a few clicks in my favor. And it's like one of my friends told me one time, he said, Ernie, the world is run by C students. So if you can be a C plus or a B, you're going to do real well. If you can be an A or an A plus, you're going to soar like an eagle. So if I take responsibility for doing all those things, or for everything that happens to me as being a result of my actions, my decisions, then I'm going to start to be able to say, hey, I'm going to make more good things happen in my life than bad things. And at the end of the day, when you take that final rest, you will have had a much more fulfilling life. You will have been more successful. And even if something bad does happen to you that might have been out of your control, you're aware of it. And so you can take responsibility at that point for saying, okay, this bad thing happened to me. How do I dig myself out from under this rock? And then you go right back to strategic planning. You identify what that problem is, you analyze it, you come up with a plan, and then you execute the plan. And it sounds a little cliche and it sounds a little simplistic, but again, like those immutable truths, as said by Thucydides, it ain't going nowhere. It's going to be here for my grandchildren, the same as it is for me. It's an immutable principle. So take ownership of the consequences of your actions, and no one will ever own you. You're responsible for everything that happens to you, everything. So if you can make negative things happen in your life, then you can make positive things happen too. We are used to a society and a country based on the ideals of self-sufficient, rugged individualism. But now, that is called toxic masculinity, and it's not. There is a reason that we act the way that we do as men, and we are held to, it's don't misread what I'm saying. We're held to a higher standard than a woman. Now, I don't mean that I don't mean it on that balance beam. I mean, you need to look at yourself and say, I am held to a higher standard because I have set my bar high, not low. Like I said in the beginning, that was Michelangelo. His fear was that we have set the bar too low and achieved our goals. You set the bar high. So I look at myself and go, I'm held to a higher standard than 99% of the people. I probably shouldn't have used women as an example, but I'm going to get to that in a second, because that's not being toxic. That's not toxic masculinity, which I think, again, is one of those escape valves that the left or that liberals use to justify being as my son would say, a weak weasel wimp. And I refuse to be that. And I don't know how you could be self-respectful if you were a weak weasel wimp. And so again, when I heard several of you guys say, man, one thing I never do is miss going to the gym. Well, what are you actually saying? You're saying a lot. You're saying a lot to me, because I analyze all that stuff almost immediately as it's being said. Okay, there's self-discipline. There's personal responsibility for your health. There's a habit too. We're going to talk about habits in a second. And it's a good thing. So you've decided that you're going to do a good thing because it's going to have a positive result. And by the way, exercise, we could we could have a whole hour and a half talking about the benefits of being physically fit and following the nutrition and healthy lifestyle and all that. So that's a good thing. So right then and there, you've made a statement that I'm disciplined. I'm taking responsibility for my health, and I have created a good habit that I now follow. And I'm almost positive that if anyone were to talk to you, you would be willing, way willing to spend time giving them advice on how to exercise correctly and trying to motivate them to go. Because again, I'm using exercise and things like that as an example. Man, when people start getting in shape, one of the things they want to do is they want to pass that experience on to someone else, because it's such a good feeling that you want others to share in it. But the thing about the toxic masculinity is, as Jordan Peterson has said, and it's funny you brought Jordan up, because I've got a quote by him in here that I also think is super important. But there's nothing wrong with being the guy who fixes things. There's nothing wrong with being the parent that says, you know what? Nope. I know mom might want to do this, but I'm going to force you to do this because you're not getting out of this. I'll take the fall for being the bad guy. And I'm fine with that. That's a man's job. A woman's a nurturer. She gives all of those things. Not that men can't be nurturers too. There's nothing wrong with it. But the man at times has to put on the hat that says, I'm the disciplinarian. I'm the guy who protects this family. I'm the guy who will give my life without a second of hesitation to ensure the safety and the protection of my wife and my family. And quite honestly, I don't know how this is going to sound, but if I were a woman, I wouldn't be attracted to a guy who is a weak weasel wimp. I'll tell you that right now. It's strong, vital, athletic, get my freaking hands dirty, give me the heaviest stone to carry. That's who I am. That's what I want to be. And that's not toxic masculinity. It's only toxic to people that are intimidated by that or fear it, or are those people who might look in the mirror and go, man, I'm a weak weasel wimp. Damn, I'm not going to sacrifice or give the effort to become that toxic man. So I'm just going to degrade it. I'm going to criticize it. I'm going to make fun of it. I'm going to proselytize against it. That's not toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity is that person trying to bring us down, because men have a role. We're different than women. We're bigger, stronger. We're the ones who go to war and sacrifice our bodies and our souls to protect others. That's not toxic masculinity. So I could go on. I could go on after that for quite a while too. So personal responsibility is your greatest responsibility. Self-discipline, it's the foundation for strength of character. True self-confidence and self-esteem is gained by seeking out the struggle against adversity, never by avoiding it. And one of the things that, as a coach, because I coached both baseball and several other sports in my career, I'm from northern Wisconsin, and I don't want to, again, without sounding high-handed about it, life was a lot tougher where I'm from. There's cold, harsh winters. Everybody hunts. It's not an area where there is high affluence. So when you go hunting and mom goes hunting and the kids go hunting and everyone else and fishing and everything, that's to put food on the table for the next couple of months at least. And it's a rougher life than someone who grew up maybe where I live right now, which we're desperately trying to get out of here. But my point being is that now we're in one of those more or less affluent neighborhoods. And as a coach, when I was out here, I was like, holy shit, these kids can't take a harsh word. And I never did anything except try and improve the character of the people that I coached, because I knew one thing for sure. The greatest coaches that have ever existed in any sport had one primary goal. Number one goal was to create a better individual first. Because if you create a better individual, then you will create a better player, then you will create a better team. And at the end of that road, if God willing and the creek don't rise, you're going to be a team that might be in the championship. So it starts with that idea that if I can improve these people in their character, and we'll talk about the SEAL teams in a second about this specifically, but if I can improve that character, then teaching the physical skills, that's an easy day, because they will have self-discipline, they will have personal responsibility, they will have an honest evaluation of themselves, or the ability to create that honest evaluation. Now, speaking about the SEALs, the organization is basically structured on one basic premise. I made it through BUDS. You're next to me. You made it through BUDS. The guys next to you made it through BUDS, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We all know at that point that we have gone to what some people consider to be the outer limits of their performance without giving up. Well, what does that translate to me when I'm in a firefight and the guy next to me, I know, has done the same exact thing. He's capable of the same exact things that I am. I know he's going to be there for me. I know that he has the strength of will, the resolve, physical skills, and everything else, that I can count on him come thick or thin. Well, that's part of that, building that team. Now, when you look at, let's look at SEAL Team 6, for example. And it's funny because I've seen someone else use the same exact story. I don't know where, how or where they got almost the same information. But when SEAL Team 6 decides on someone who is going to be a member of that team, and that's a team that's honed to basically a razor's edge. At any point in time, if I were a member of SEAL Team 6, I could say, you know what? That guy, Tom, I just don't like him. I don't like him. Boom, he's gone. So even though he might have all of the physical skills to be a member of this organization, there's one thing that's more important: strength of character. That is basically the necessary foundation for you to become a member of that organization. Because here's the deal. If you were a person, and I have a bunch of charts and things that I've used in different talks about this, but I don't have them at hand, but I'll try to describe it as best I can. You bring in a person who's got all of the skills necessary. He's a physical specimen, strong, breeze through BUDS, no questions asked, has all of the shooting skills, the diving skills, the parachuting skills, everything that you would need to be a Navy SEAL. But he has a low amount of moral character. Okay. Then we have a guy who is really on the low end of the scale of physical skills. He's not up to our standards, let's say, but he has strength of character, and that shines through. You cannot hide forever. Some people are real good at it, but fortunately for us, there are a small percentage of the population that can fool you into thinking that they're a person of high moral fiber when they really aren't. High moral character, moral integrity, that's something that shines through like a beacon, like a light. And if you become aware of being able to determine that in other individuals, you'll see it immediately. It doesn't take more than a day's worth of hanging out to find out what that person's all about. So back to that person who has strong moral fiber and the person who has high skills but not that good a character, which one do you think we're going to choose? We're going to choose that person with the high moral integrity. Why? Because we can teach anybody the skills. You can teach anyone that. And if there is a reason that they can't check off all the boxes for those skills, then they shouldn't be a Navy SEAL anyway. But if you get a person of high moral character, you can teach them the skills, and that's the individual that you're after. So when I talk about the coaching, if I can strive to create a good person, then I can teach them any of the skills they want, because a good person has self-discipline, they have motivation, they have personal responsibility, they have that ability, if I've done my job correctly, to get them to evaluate where they need to improve. Now, David Goggins said it also real succinctly. He said, look, don't triple down on your strengths. Triple down on your weaknesses. If you're strong in a certain area, find where you're weak. Well, how are you going to find out where you're weak? Unless you can brutally look at yourself and go, damn, this is where I need to improve. Because it's easy to breeze through life relying on the things that you're good at, but it's a lot tougher going through life addressing the things that you're not good at. Because again, that's the difference between that person in the boat and the person that says, you know what, I need an oar and I need a rudder because I'm going to steer this where I want it to go. I'm not letting any stream or tide or anything take me someplace I don't want to go. So again, it's important to understand that if you start to realize that you can control those things, you start to put together that plan that I spoke about from the strategic planning to be able to meet that enemy, hit him head on, triple down on your weaknesses. You know you're strong. You know you're good at this. You know you're good at that. All they need is a little spit shine on them once in a while, but where I need the heavy grit sandpaper is on the weaknesses. Okay, that is why it is so easy for that opponent who's looking back at you from the mirror to beat you, because they know your weaknesses. Okay, but most people never want to face that. So going back to the coaching for a moment, when I was talking about those kids that they couldn't take a harsh word, it wasn't even really harsh sometimes. I'd see kids sometimes strike out and cry and go and burst into tears. Now I'm talking, 8, 10, 12-year-old kids sometimes, and I'm like, holy crap, man. You've never stood in front of a Marine Corps DI, and I don't expect them to when they're 12 years old, but what I'm saying is, like, if you ever do, you're in for a real rude awakening, my friend. I'm stressed, It's like, no, you're not. You're not stressed at all. How do you know what your all is if you've never been pushed to your limits? If you've never pushed yourself past those limits? Because the other thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is we're all around 30% quitters as a whole, and we think we've given 100%. That's where most people stop. I'm all in. I've done everything I can. This is it. I have nothing left. And they're only at about 30% because they've never, ever pushed themselves past that self-constructed barrier. The hardest barriers that exist for any human being are the ones that are self-constructed. They're not put there by the system. They're not put there by someone else. They're put there by you. And that's why those self-imposed barriers are always the hardest ones to overcome, because we've already said, I can't beat that. I can't go past that. Well, who the hell's telling you that? I've never had any person come to me and go, well, maybe with the exception of playing in the NBA, where someone said, Ernie, you got to modify your plan because you're not going to be an NBA basketball player. You're 5'7". That ain't going to happen. You're not Spud Webb. But every other barrier that's been put down before me has been self-imposed. And That's why they have the deepest roots, and they're the hardest ones to get at and dig out and pull that out from the ground and get rid of it. But again, that's part of that whole self-evaluation. Humans need adversity to grow stronger. It's just like when a couple of the guys were talking about the going to the gym. Well, what's the principle of resistive weight training? It's to make the muscle stronger because it gets stressed. And that's the only way you grow. How do you make your health, your heart stronger? Through cardiovascular exercise. And think about it too. And I know you guys understand this. The hardest exercise, at least from what I've determined and what I've heard from many, many people, was squats. So what do most people do? They do a lot of bench presses. They do curls. They do triceps presses. They do all of those other exercises that produce the showy muscles. But the ability to maximize your results through resistive weight training is to squat. Squats make your arm bigger, your arms bigger. They make your chest deeper. They make your shoulders stronger because you're building a foundation that supports all of those other actions. And we could get into the physiology of how heavy squats actually start to produce more testosterone and androgen and all of that other good stuff. So there is a physical part of it too. But here's the deal. The hardest freaking exercise that I've ever done in my life has been squatting heavy weights. It's the easiest one to say, I'm not going to do the squats today. Okay. But if there were one exercise that I should never neglect, it's the squats. But it's painful. It's hard. It's gut busting. And so that's the ones that, you look at most people, it's like, what are you doing? You should be doing squats. You want to maximize your potential. You want to be a bodybuilder. You want to be a superior athlete. You want to add gas power to all your efforts and whatever endeavor that you're after, do squats. But it's the one that hurts the most. So most people avoid it because we avoid those things that make us feel uncomfortable. Well, screw that. What was my favorite exercise? I'll give you one guess. It was the squats. I loved and I live for doing squats. But if something happened and I had to be like, Ernie, you got to get home today because Aunt Judy's coming over at 4:00 and she's just in town for a few hours, and I'd be like, damn, I'm gonna have to cut my workout from 2 hours down to a half hour. Guess what I'm gonna be doing? I'm gonna do squats. Okay, but that's part of that. Well, here's a good quote. One of my most favorite of all times. If something is necessary, do it every day. If it isn't, don't do it at all. Now, who said that? Dan Gable. Dan Gable was probably one of the greatest wrestlers who ever existed. And I mean, all the way up through gold medal Olympic champion. I think he lost in his entire wrestling career. I believe he only lost one match. And that was the last match of his NCAA championships in his senior year. So that's a tough record to beat. Plus, if you look at him as a coach, he has produced page after page after page of All-American and NCAA champions in every weight class. He's produced, I think, 14 gold medal Olympic champions who came through his program when I think he was the coach at the University of Iowa. But that was one of his mainstay quotes. If something's necessary, do it every day. If it's not necessary, don't do it at all. In the words of David Goggins, one more time, never practice easy, embrace the suck. True self-confidence can only be gained through self-discipline. Here's one I like, just because I was a boxer and I wanted to be like Muhammad Ali. I didn't win my fights with my fists. I won them with my feet. Muhammad Ali. Now, what does that mean? Why is that a quote that I carry with me all the time? Because it epitomizes the ability to self-evaluate. Most guys practice their punching. They practice the jab, cross, hook, the uppercut, all of those things. They neglect footwork. Because guess what? Footwork drills in boxing are some of the most exhausting and most demanding parts of it. I can go in and bang the heavy bag all day long. I love it. I absolutely love it. And I trained at a high rate of intensity, very high rate of intensity. But what was the hardest thing that I could do was the footwork drills. It's like the freaking floor is a vacuum, sucking your energy out of you. Well, guess what? Think about Muhammad Ali. I won my fights with my feet because his footwork was so seemingly, appearingly effortless and smooth that he was able to completely control the distance that he had between him and his opponent. He could quickly shift his weight. He could move. He could dance circles around an opponent. And I've always said, hey, when I'm teaching these young guys, especially boxing skills, I always tell them, you got to think about this. The best dancer is going to be the best boxer because they know how to use their feet efficiently and smoothly. Am I going too long here?
Ernie, it's been a phenomenal talk. We're already 15 minutes over time, so maybe let's.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. It's been great, but we got to wrap it up.
Okay, I'm going to finish on this one right here because I got off on the physical exercise stuff. But see, that's one of those things. These principles do not care where they are applied. They are always applied. You have to see that through all of the stuff that you're trying to digest. Hopefully, from some of the things I pointed out. But two things. We'll end it on this: moral integrity. Always do the right thing, no matter what the consequences. No matter what the consequences, always do the right thing. Moral strength, like physical strength, is lost when not exercised on a regular basis. Gentlemen, I challenge you, every single one of you, to strive to be the uncommon man. Thank you very much. I appreciate all your time. I hope I haven't bored you.
Not even remotely. One of these days, I'm going to take 2 months off my day job, Mr. Emerson, and I'm going to come and be an unpaid intern at your knife shop. I don't know how to make a knife. So there you go. It's going to
just up 32 days. I don't know, Nicky. Think about that.
Oh man, I got to do it. I've always wanted to. I got to do it. You know, the Four Natures of Man was extremely powerful for me, as were the Five Virtues of the Uncommon Man. And it really hit me that most of us are 30% quitters. So my fitness coach has been telling me that I'm not going as hard as I can in my training session. And my personal trainer is my 19-year-old son, and he's basically dad. Pussy. So it's okay. 30% quitter. I'll remember that. Ernest, would you be willing to come back another time just to tell your personal story? Because we had no time to get into that. And man, you all want to hear his personal story because it's ridiculously cool. Like what he did to start the company and get in all that. So would you be willing to do that?
Absolutely, Nick. Anything. You've been so gracious to me and given me a lot of opportunities to put this out. Anything you want to ask, you go right ahead and I'll do it.
God bless you. Yeah, we'll do it in a couple months. That's great. So, men, this has been another spectacular Sovereign Circle meeting with another spectacular world-renowned expert. Thank you for being here. Good night.
All righty. Thank you all. God bless all of you.
Thank you for listening to the Sovereign Man Podcast. If you're ready to take charge of your life and become the man you've always wanted to be, we invite you to join the movement at sovereignman.ca.